Okay, this is the video where we're going to focus on how maritime empires were maintained and further developed through their strategies. So, what we know by this point in the unit is that the nation states that emerged in Europe were all very motivated to expand for economic reasons. They were seeking wealth to make their people happy and to finance their states. We know that they built their maritime empires through two waves, and essentially in the Eastern Hemisphere created trading posts, and in the Western Hemisphere created colonies. These two things were designed to bring in wealth. What we want to know is the financial strategies, the plans that maritime empires used to make sure this wealth flowed into their nation through consolidating and maintaining their power. So, our essential question, what you need to take notes on and stop to answer at the end of this, is we want to be able to explain how rulers employed certain economic strategies to consolidate and maintain power from 1450 to 1750. And the three strategies that we're focusing on, and you will need to be able to define these, are the commercial revolution, a joint stock company, and finally, mercantilism. So when we unpack this question a little bit, the word strategy jumps out and seems to be the key to really understanding what these leaders are doing. Strategy, as you know, is simply a plan that is designed to achieve some sort of goals. So when you look at your life, you have strategies to, get your work done, study, you have a strategy to get out of high school and go on with your life. You might have a strategy of moving to the North Pole for all I know. The bottom line is a strategy comes up with a plan and it's designed to reach a goal. So when we put it in the context of the maritime empires, we have these rulers who are coming up with certain plans to make sure that they bring in the wealth that they need to run their nations and to make their people happy. And through that, they will consolidate their power. And because they're bringing in wealth, they'll maintain it. So the bottom line is what we're trying to figure out is what were the three parts to the plan and how did they bring in wealth? So, overall, when we come up with a claim that this lesson is supposed to support, the claim would be commercialism, joint stock companies, and mercantilism were strategies used by maritime empires to ensure that they brought in wealth to support their governments. These marshaled a nation's resources to producing the most profitable goods, limited the risk by allowing private individuals to fund colonization, and created laws that ensured more gold and silver flowed into a nation than left. So essentially, the plan is to bring in wealth through using commercialism, joint stock companies, and mercantilism. And these three things would help them reach the goal of bringing in wealth through producing something that is very valuable, limiting the risk in the empire building by allowing private individuals to fund it, and finally, using the legal system to make sure that the gold and the silver in the form of wealth flowed into the nation and they didn't go bankrupt. So let's get into this a little bit. So, this is the world of trade that maritime empires created, a global network of exchange in which the Indian Ocean system in the Eastern Hemisphere is connected to the new Atlantic and Pacific systems in the Western Hemisphere. This was built by maritime empires. But due to the distances and basically the diversity of the populations, how can one of these nation states, such as Portugal, Spain, France, the Dutch Republic, or Great Britain, how can they make sure that their wealth is coming in? Well, they come up with a strategy. They know that they need the wealth to survive. That wealth is in the form of gold and silver. And to become powerful in that competitive relationship, the amount of gold and silver that you have not only equals your wealth, but also equals your power. So this was accomplished in different ways. One, some states, especially the Spanish, found it. Other states produced some sort of commodity that was in high demand that they could sell and bring in gold and silver. And finally, to take over the role of middlemen in trade and how that would bring in gold and silver. But what is our strategy toward reaching these three things? Well, this is where commercialism, joint stock companies, and mercantilism come in. A king has issues. And when he comes up with this strategy, basically what it'll do is it will make the nation very powerful. So we start off with the commercial revolution, also known as commercialism. And this is a transition from a barter, survival based economy to more of a money based, enjoy my life economy. It's based in economic specialization. Not only are individuals going to focus on one or two things to do, using that money to buy what they want and need, but on the state level, commercialism focuses on the production of 3, 5, maybe even 8 things that they could sell and bring in wealth. And by bringing in that wealth, they could, get other things. This involves the movement of money. And as a matter of fact, commercialism or the commercial revolution is about establishing the flow or the circulation of money from one hand to another. This can happen in two ways. Obviously, with people now earning a salary through their economic specialization, they can buy things. Also, we have the taking out of loans to invest in certain business ventures that also make money. This allows not only the people to be happy, but to pay their taxes, and greatly increases the amount of wealth that flows into the government coffers that can flow back out in terms of services and protection. A government has to support this through certain policies, such as the selling of stocks, limited liability, insurances, a very good currency that does not lose value. These things all help people specialize and help nations specialize and help money flow very easily. The negative downside of this is that since now we're about making money, we've started what's known as the price revolution. This essentially is the gradual increase in price over time. For example, when I was a senior in high school, gas was 99 cents. A Big Mac at McDonald's or a Whopper at Burger King, that too was 99 cents. When you go in today, those prices of those things have risen to about $3, $3.50. That's what the price revolution is. So when we stop and we say, okay, this transition to a money-based economy in which people work to earn money, which the commercial revolution was, is essentially an effective strategy for bringing in wealth. Because first of all, it provides for the circulation of money. An economy, just like a human body, needs a circulation of money to be able to be healthy. Secondly, it focused the efforts of not only individuals, but also nations into doing things that would be the most profitable. And it also ensured that more would be exported than imported. So this is what commercialism is. And this is how it's a strategy to bring in wealth to a nation. The next, we have joint stock companies. And a joint stock company is essentially a private business that is allowed to sell stocks to investors, to pool their resources, and to be able to finance both exploration and colonization. Through the government, the king controls these companies by giving them a charter or permission to explore and settle a specific area in return for signing a contract for at least 10%, if not 20%, of the profits. What made this work was the adoption of limited liabilities laws, laws that protect a person's investment in a company to only their investment. This has protected the investor's wealth and made it an appealing way to try to get money. So to kind of explain this in a little bit of different ways, when you did your practical experiment of colonization, you were creating a joint stock company. You were pooling together resources, getting people to invest, collecting that money, and you were asking me for permission to go establish a pretty much private colony in the Americas in return for a set of profits. So we both basically benefit. We benefit, first of all, from me not taking the wealth, being the king, and you getting the opportunity to make a profit. This is an example of the most successful joint stock company in world history. It was the Dutch East India Company, also called the VOC. In 1637, the Dutch East India Company was worth $7.9 trillion. To put that in terms that we can understand today, $7.9 trillion in 2001, when this was made, could not be made up by one company. Rather, it was made up of many of the most successful companies that we see in the world today. Needless to say, a profitable company means lots of income for the government, and a profitable company means lots of things that commercialized individuals can use their money to not only invest in, but also to buy the things that these companies make. So, how does this provide an effective strategy for bringing in wealth into these nations? Well, first of all, this limited the losses for the government. Remember, we're talking about a government level. And colonization was a very risky and expensive business. Well, now that private individuals are doing it, the king's not taking the risk, but the king always gets the profits from it. Secondly, it was joint stock companies that were sent out to find sources of gold and silver, but also grow specific commodities such as tobacco, cotton, and sugar. This provided something that the state could sell at additional income. So remember, the strategy here is all about bringing in wealth in the form of gold and silver. And if you're noticing that people are commercialized, producing things that they could sell for gold and silver, but also the state is specializing. And so this provides the circulation of money needed for a healthy government. And joint stock companies come in and make it better because they limit the losses that a government could take. They're the ones that find the gold and silver and produce the commodity, bringing in more wealth. And through taxation and the sales, provides the government with lots of wealth. So this brings us to the daddy of them all, mercantilism. Mercantilism is both a political system and an economic system. And essentially, What this is mercantilism states that there's only a set amount of gold and silver in the world, and a state's goal in achieving wealth is to get as much as that as possible. So certain laws, certain procedures, and certain patterns of trade are established to make sure that that flow of gold and silver is coming into the state. It's based on some driving principles. Gold and silver not only equals wealth, but equals power. There's only a set amount of gold and silver in the world. Maritime empire, the purpose was to bring in wealth, and that the job of a colony is to bring in wealth not only through growing a commodity, but also trading only with the mother country. And a good navy was absolutely vital. So when we look at how it's supposed to work, that a mother country's treasury, the measure of not only how much wealth it has to fund their government, but the ultimate power it has, is created by a favorable balance of trade made up of more exports than imports. So you have colonies to make sure to keep that favorable balance of trade, in which raw materials and commodities such as gold, silver, fur, lumber, foodstuffs, cotton, tobacco, sugar are traded only with the mother country, and manufactured goods such as textiles, furnitures, guns, and etc., they're only sold in the colonies. So to put it another way, in the scenario on top, England sells 100 yards of wool cloth to France for 1 ounce of gold. And in return, France sells 100 bottles of wine to England for 1 ounce of gold. Now, I know that the values of the cloth versus the wine are not equal in reality, but for the sake of this demonstration, they are. Now, when England begins to sell a lot of their quality wool cloth, let's say 200 yards of cotton at 2 ounces of gold, yet France continues to sell at the same level, France is in trouble, because not only is there wealth flowing out of their nation into England, but also their power. And this is what mercantilism is designed to avoid. So when you look at mercantilism, this helps bringing in wealth through regulation. Mercantilism, being a political/economic system, is based on a set of laws. And these laws are designed to ensure that a favorable balance of trade is established through colonies only selling and only buying from the mother country. So in review, these, as you can see, were big changes from the policies and the strategies used by states in the tapestry. It used to be that during the tapestry, trade was fairly free. It was monitored and taxed, but not to the level and the control that it was under mercantilism, commercialization, and finally joint stock companies. So this is how rulers employed a plan, an economic strategy, to bring in wealth to consolidate and maintain their power throughout the time period. Through commercialization, the specialization, and the sale of a few items to bring in money, joint stock companies who not only established the colonies, but produced the commodities, and mercantilism's laws to maintain the favorable balance of trade. These leaders were effectively able to build huge empires and bring in wealth to support their entire country.